nice. Oh man, look at that.
Think small spoons don't work? Look at that big fat rainbow went after that micro trigger spoon. He found it out there in open water. Fish on, fish in the box. What a beauty. Collins Lake, baby.
Trigger spoons, trigger spoon magnums, trigger spoon pros, trigger spoon juniors, speed spoons, speed spoon pros. Looking for spoons for your trout fishing adventure? Think FHS spoons. You can check them out at fishhuntshoot.com. Howdy guys, Cal Kellogg here. Do I tip my spoons? You bet I do. I don't tip them, super often. I tip them about 10% of the time. It's something that I do when the trout are playing hard to get, when they're being fickle, when I have to have that little bit extra to hook fish. If you're not tipping your spoons, you're not catching as many fish as you could be, and that means you're not catching as many big fish as you could throughout the season or throughout your angling career. I get a lot of questions about tipping spoons. What do I tip them with? How do I do it? And this is kind of a thumbnail sketch of how I do it, and some of the common mistakes that people make. First of all, I don't really tip my larger spoons because that tends to be more of a power approach. I tend to be trolling faster and I'm trying to trigger a reaction strike. It's when I bust out the small stuff like this micro trigger spoon, maybe a trigger spoon junior, maybe a Dick Knight, when the bite is already tough. I've already gone through my fast presentations. They aren't working that great. The fish are a little bit off. They're a little bit, docile. They're more interested in kind of resting and being inactive than in feeding. That's when I'll start tipping small spoons. That's when the small spoons come out, and I'll tip them to give them that little bit extra scent, that little bit extra taste, just that little bit extra that turns fish, that come in and look at the bait and peel off to fish that come in, look at the bait, nip at that tipping on the hook, and end up hooked. Typically, they're pretty lightly hooked, but you can put a lot of those fish in the net, and tipping can be a real day saver. And I'll tip with a lot of different things. Shad skin, anchovy skin, sardine skin, natural fish with a little bit of meat on it. I'll tip with gulp, I'll tip with shrimp, I'll tip with little bits of nightcrawler, which that's the most common thing to tip with if you're a trout guy. It's all about going out there and tipping with nightcrawler. Now, one of the problems a lot of guys have is they'll tell me, I'm tipping my lures, but I'm not having the kind of action that I need to trigger strikes. And here's typically what they're doing. They're taking a little tiny lure like the micro trigger, like a Dick Knight, something like that, and they're tipping them like this. They're going to chop off a piece of nightcrawler, and they're going to hook it on the hook, and it's going to look something like this. They're going to have a tiny little spoon with a big old hunk of meat on it. Well, that meat, or if it's a piece of shrimp, or in this case, a piece of gulp, that's going to have so much resistance on the rear end of the lure, it's going to prevent that lure from kicking back and forth, okay? If you're tipping a small spoon like this, you need a little tiny piece of meat. Let me put on something that I would tip this with, and you'll see the difference. So I've got just a little tiny thin ribbon of gulp, and I'll just pull that just barely here on the hook, and I'm just going to hold the hook up here. You see that little piece of gulp? Very tiny, very small, very little resistance. And what you're trying to do with that, the fish will come in. When I run my underwater camera, you'll see fish come in and get right on the tail of the spoon a lot of times, and they'll peel off. Well, when the fish are in a funk, when they're feeling fickle, when they don't really want to feed, they'll come up behind the lure, they'll get a smell of that, they'll taste it a little bit, it's real meat, and they'll get just enough of that hook to get hooked in the lower jaw or in the top of their mouth. It's going to be fish on. You're going to have to play them gently when you're using this tactic, but it's a real, as I said, it's a real day saver. It's a way to put fish in the boat when they don't really want to go. It's a very unobtrusive spoon with a very small piece of real meat on the hook. The spoon's going to run properly. It's going to pull the fish in, and that little piece of tipping material, whether it's shrimp or nightcrawler, or in this case, gulp, that's going to close the deal. So remember, tipping, when you're spoon trolling, tipping is something that you need in your arsenal. You don't want to overdo it. You don't need to tip every day. You don't need to tip on every trip. It's something you might pull out of your pocket, you know, every 10th trip or something like that. It's a great approach in the high mountains, up in the Sierras, when the fish are up there, they're dimpling the surface, the water has gone to glass, they're feeding on insects, they're feeding on small stuff. Put on your small spoon, tip it with a little tiny piece of night crawler, troll slow, you know, 1 to 1.5 miles an hour, and you will start picking up fish again. It's a very subtle tactic, but it's something that you need to have in your repertoire when you're faced with tough conditions and tough to hook fish. That's our tip for today. I'll catch you next time right here on YouTube. I'm signing off for now. I want to thank you guys for all the support. If you're not a subscriber, you know, hit that subscribe button. You'll always know when I'm on here talking trout tactics and more. If you're looking for tackle, if you're looking for micro trigger spoons or, you know, whatever, rods, reels, line, lead core, and more, go on over to fishhuntshoot.com. Thanks a lot, guys, and I will see you real soon.